Hi everyone, Joel Portsmouth here, Solutions Consultant with IT Smart Solutions. Just going to be going over today some basic fundamentals training for Microsoft Office 365. So this is going to be handy for anyone that has migrated over from another platform such as Google Suite, Google Workspaces, or even managed Microsoft Office 365 product that wasn't directly through Microsoft as a commercial customer. So sometimes the platform can be, for example, resold through GoDaddy, and the functionalities are slightly different. And so this is just going to not be too in depth, but just touch on the basics. If it's your first time using the platform, on how to sort of get up and running on day one and do the fundamentals that you'll need for your day-to-day work. So first things first, I just want to sort of talk about the browser that we use to access Office 365. It's totally up to your own personal preference. You can use any browser. I'm using Firefox in this instance. You can use Chrome, you can use Opera or Safari, and the same goes for mobile devices as well, and tablets, not just laptops and computers, Windows or Mac. But there is Microsoft Edge, which is also developed by Microsoft. It's the default built-in browser in Windows 10 that tends to have the best compatibility, and that is just because Office 365 is a product developed by Microsoft, and so is Microsoft Edge, and so it's a Microsoft product talking to a Microsoft product, and there's been a lot of work done to sort of make those two compatible with each other and work really well. So the vast majority of the time, 99 times out of 100, the browser isn't going to make a difference. Office 365 works perfectly across all browsers and across all device types and operating systems, but it is just worth bearing in mind that in the rare instance that you are running into some sort of a strange issue or a problem, or getting an error code when trying to access or use Office 365 in the web browser, a great first troubleshooting step before contacting the help desk would be to swap to Microsoft Edge and test doing the same thing in that browser again and see if that resolves the issue, because it is quite common that can indeed resolve the issue. And so Microsoft Edge now, it actually runs on the Chromium backend, which is what Google Chrome is built on. So it's sort of no longer, there was kind of a reputation with Internet Explorer there for quite some time that it was very slow and clunky and sort of had poor performance and was a subpar browser. But Microsoft Edge is actually now, it's a very fully functioned, polished product that performs well and works well and looks great. So there is sort of some stigma attached around that, but Edge is definitely a great browser to use. So to access Office 365, the first thing you can see I've done here in the web browser is I've browsed to login.microsoftonline.com. And so that's the URL, the web address to access the login page here. You can actually go to office.com as well. There are a couple of alternative URLs or domains that all point to the same spot, or even if you just type in your address bar Office 365, your search engine, whether it be Google or Bing, the first result that comes up at the top for that as well should point you into the right place. Now it's worth noting before we log in that Microsoft differentiates between two types of Microsoft accounts. So there's what's called a work or a school account, which is sort of your corporate account, and then there's also a personal account. And so Microsoft considers these sort of two separate systems and separate logins, and all the infrastructure is sort of separate. And so if you've got a personal Microsoft account, it might be attached to live.com, Live, which was formerly hotmail.com or sort of outlook.com. That is the personal account side of things, and that sort of more ties into Windows 10 at home, the App Store, even sort of some of the gaming functions with Xbox built in. And so your personal account and your work/school account are considered separate. The usernames and passwords don't work between each other. So it is just sort of worth noting if you ever bump into an error saying, incorrect password or, username or account can't be found, just double check that you are using the work/school credentials for your corporate account and that you're actually logging in at login.microsoftonline.com or office.com as opposed to live.com. So you just want to make the differentiation there between which account you're using and make sure that you're logging into the correct part of Office 365, particularly if you've got both a work or school account and a personal account sharing the same email address, just to so you sort of don't have some confusion there. So we'll come to this page and you see it's pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward in that it just wants us to enter in our email address, which is our username, for the first time to log in here. So I'm just going to do that now. And then it will bring us to a next page where it prompts for the password. And you can see here we've got this sort of nice orange background actually, which matches the IT Smart company logo colors. And so that's one advanced feature of Office 365 that we can do for your business is sort of company branding and theming, where we can add company logos and images and colors and things like that. So we're going to log in here. We'll just press sign in. Now, depending on how things have been set up, and if it's your first time logging in, if you're working with our help desk, we may have actually set a temporary password for you. So there is an option to set a temporary password, and so you enter that in at this password prompt here, and then Office 365 will then immediately on first login then prompt you again to change that password. And so if you do have that prompt come up, obviously you'll enter your old password and then you'll enter a new password of your own personal preference twice to confirm the spelling of it, and then save that in. And so we do usually use a tool called Password Push, which is pwpush.com, to securely send credentials to people, passwords and login details, or we'll generally do it over the phone. And worth keeping in mind for security reasons that sending or receiving the login details and the password for your account in plain text, which means not using something like passwordpush.com or some sort of secure service or over the phone on a phone call. If your account was ever hacked in the future and someone had access to your email box, they could scroll through your emails, find that email, and actually find what your password is there in plain text, and take advantage of that to log into your account and hack your account, access other things. So even if the password that we've given you as a sort of isn't a temporary password, so it doesn't prompt you to change the password on your own right away, I would recommend still changing it anyway to something of your preference so that no one knows it, including us having set it, an engineer from our help desk. So you'll see this security prompt here. I'm just going to skip this as I've not got it enabled for the sake of this demonstration, but what this is two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And so just for this demonstration with a test account I've got here, I'm going to be skipping this, but for everyone else with their true day-to-day corporate account that they're using in sort of a real life, real world production environment, I would absolutely recommend turning this on immediately rather than skipping it. And it's actually now something that we do actually enable for all of our customers by default. So there's been separate research come out from both Google and Microsoft to show that 99% of reported account breaches or account compromises to them are accounts that don't have multi-factor authentication turned on. So it's part of the ACSC's, the Australian government's Essential 8 framework as well. So 8 cybersecurity controls that they recommend for all Australian small businesses to take. One of them is enabling multi-factor authentication. So if you do come across this message in a real world scenario, definitely don't skip. Press next to enter in secondary contact details, secondary email, secondary mobile phone, so that you can then configure two-factor authentication so that it will send to that mobile number an SMS one-time PIN code required for you to log in, as well as your password, so that if your password is compromised, your account is still safe unless someone then also has access to your mobile phone to get that PIN code. So as mentioned, I'll just skip this here for the sake of this demonstration here, but like I said, absolutely go ahead with this in normal circumstances. And so yes, again, this is that prompt that I mentioned where it will ask for an authentication phone and email address. So I am just going to skip that, but definitely enable that yourself if it hasn't been enabled by us already. So now you can see here where we're sort of logged in. We're here on our home page or our dashboard here. And so you can see I've got no content activity in sort of this pane here. But as you do start to use the platform, Office 365 will actually sort of make a note of recently accessed files and folders and documents here as well. So this is sort of when you first log in the morning, kind of your central hub or sort of overview of what's going on with you and your account in Office 365, and others in your organization or your company in the same Office 365 tenancy. So the first thing I want to show you is how to manually change that password yourself. As I mentioned before, if you aren't prompted to automatically change password on first logon, if that's not something that's been enabled on your account by yourself or an engineer at IT Smart Solutions or whoever else set up your account, you can change it manually, and I'd recommend doing that for security reasons. So I'll go over how to do that now. So if we come to the top right hand corner here, we've got our initials here in this little circle. That is sort of your default profile picture. It will automatically pull those initials from your display name there, so your first name and your surname, but you can actually change that image yourself, which is something that we're going to go over later on too. So I'm just going to press view account here. Again, just skipping through these security steps for the sake of the video demonstration here, but definitely enable those yourself. And here you can see where we're in the My Account window here, and pretty sort of front and center, quite large and noticeable. You can see this key icon where it says password, and you've got this change password button here. And so if we click on that, like I said previously, it'll get you to enter your current password, so your old password once, and then your new password again twice. And so one thing to note, actually, you can see my LastPass add in there, sort of popping up and then giving the option to generate a random password of its own. And we can definitely help you set up LastPass, and then we are a LastPass partner, and we can resell that as a password management tool for you. But if not, if you decide to create one on your own, you've got this password strength bar underneath, and so it will sort of gauge the strength of your new password that you're setting, with red sort of being weak, sort of an amber or orange being kind of neutral or average or just okay, and then green being quite strong. And so a strong complex password should have sort of a mixture of uppercase and lowercase, some numbers, some symbols, should be sort of a reasonable length, so sort of 8 or 12 characters plus, and ideally shouldn't be something easy to guess or common. So things like sort of address, birth date, partner's name, pet name, street or company, or favorite car, mother's maiden names, all those kinds of things. Ideally, you wouldn't be using any dictionary words at all. You'd sort of be creating like a sort of a gibberish string of letters and numbers that actually doesn't sort of make a word. And so if we just for example here pop in a password of our own, again you can see there I've sort of done a mixture of characters, symbols and things, and we get this green bar being strong here. So I'm just going to cancel out of that because I'm not going to change my password here, but that is how you change the password yourself there if you wanted to do that. Now I'm just going to come back to the view account page again here and go over. There are some other options there beyond, say, changing your password that I'd like to quickly touch on. So we'll just come back to that page here. So you can see we've got security info. So again, I know I mentioned that security prompt that showed there before. I skipped it for this demonstration, but you should enable it. If for whatever reason you accidentally skip it, or you skip it and then want to enable it later, or you don't get that prompt for whatever reason, maybe you've said remember my selection or don't ask me again, and so you're not getting that prompt, you can come in here and come into security info, do update info, and then again I'll skip through these steps, but we'll notice that once we're here, it's just going to get me to enter my password again. You'll notice that once we're here, it then gives you the option again to add secondary authentication contact details, so secondary phone and email, like I mentioned. So we'll just come back to this page here, but that is again, if it's for whatever reason you skip it at the time, or you miss the prompt, or you're not getting the prompt, this is the method that you can follow to get back here and to change that yourself in your profile settings at a later time. So by going to my account in the top right hand corner, and then update security info, going through the prompts, and you can see here we've got this set it up now button for each of them, which you'd fill in and then press finish. So let's back out of that for now and go over some more basics, or things that you sort of might want to do on your first day of logging in and getting set up. If we come here to My Office profile, again in the top right hand corner, you have sort of these options here where you can put sort of your contact details. You can update your profile with, you can see this sort of almost sort of a Gantt chart here, sort of a diagram of a calendar, what time slots you are and aren't booked for. You can also add things like skills and expertise. Obviously you can see you've got your change cover photo up here in the top right, and then this camera symbol here to change your photo, and this will then display to all other members inside of your organization and inside of Office 365, and so lots of people put their corporate headshots there. The skills and expertise area, for example, is great in large businesses where you have people with different skill sets using Delve and Office 365. Other staff members can then actually search for particular skills or expertise or certifications, and so you can kind of use this as a collaborative tool for how to look for the appropriate person inside of a business that has a particular skill set, or can work on a particular need or requirement that you've got. So again, day one, I would log into my account. I'd change it to a password of my own personal preference. I'd update my security info with a secondary mobile phone and email address that I can turn on multi-factor authentication, and then I'd also sort of update my profile here and a profile picture and sort of some basic details about me on day one. So I'm going to come back out of this here and come now again into the top right hand corner, but this time to a different icon, the cog wheel, or the gear icon, which is settings, and so you can see here again, this is another option or another method of reaching the change password prompt and the contact preferences prompt that we were in before, but primarily you've got the language and time zone section here, and then also dark mode on and off, and all these other themes here, which if we press view all, you can see there's quite a few options here. So relatively minor functionality, but definitely if you're going to be working out of here quite often, and you have a preference for dark mode or a certain color or contrast that works better for your eyes and your eyesight, just worth sort of having a poke around in here and picking something of your preference. Definitely language and time zone for interstate or international businesses. If it by default hasn't picked up from your local PC or your existing time zone, or if it wasn't configured when the account was created, you can set that here so that all of the times and dates and things that are displayed throughout Office 365 are in the correct time zone and the correct format, particularly with dates. In US format, for example, it's month, day, so the month comes first rather than the day. So just worth having a poke around in there as well, and sort of reviewing all of those other available settings and setting them to your preference before you get up and running and get going with everything else. So now that we've sort of got our account set up, all of our sort of settings and details and security taken care of, we sort of want to look at next steps, or what to do next in terms of sort of cracking on with daily work and daily job functions. So you can see we've got these colored tiles here down on the left hand side for all of our Office apps. So Office 365 does have Office Online, which is a cloud-based version of Office that's all done online in the web browser. So you do have the offline desktop applications that you can install as a program locally on your PC, but if you didn't want to do that, or maybe you've got a lower tier of licensing that only comes with the online version, you can do everything from inside of the web browser, and that's particularly handy actually if you're on a shared PC, possibly a hotel or an airport or an internet cafe, or you're using someone else's device, even a phone or a tablet, and you don't want to install the software locally. You don't want to sort of make a permanent modification or change to that computer by installing an application. Obviously you can uninstall afterwards. It's relatively minor, but this option is available here. It might even be that you are working off of a 4G or 5G mobile data hotspot, and so maybe you've got a slow internet connection and it's going to take too long to install the entire Office suite offline, or it might not be that the connection's slow, but it could be quite fast. But with the 4G and 5G mobile data, if you're traveling or roaming, the connection might be fast, but obviously it's a metered connection that can be quite expensive. Sometimes it's $10 a gigabyte, and the Office install can be sort of upwards of 4 gigabytes. So you might opt to not use your data and use your connection on such a large install file there. That instance is where you can use Office Online here with these tiles on the left hand side. So you can see you've got this plus button here. This sort of allows you to create or pin your own little icons, and by default it sort of puts kind of your core applications here, and then the remainder are kind of your most frequently used or recently used applications. With some of the higher tiers of licensing, it does actually give you access to quite a few apps, and you can sort of end up where you're in a situation where you've got access to so many applications as part of Office 365 that the tiles don't all fit on this bar on the left hand side here. And so to get around that, you've got this 3x3 grid of dots in the top right hand corner, these 9 dots, which is your app launcher. So obviously here the blue W is Word, green X is Excel, red P is PowerPoint, and obviously Outlook, OneDrive, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, and Bookings. And you can see too, if you aren't sure what an icon is, you can hover over it and you have this alt text appear here which tells you what it is. If you can't find the appropriate icon here, or there's too many, if we click the 9 dots in the grid up in the top left hand corner here, we now get this app launcher, which is sort of a larger window, and we can press all apps and it will actually then show us sort of the full extent of all of the applications that you've got access to. And you can see here lists, for example. There's quite a few that are showing up here that weren't showing on this toolbar on the left hand side. So definitely worth sort of opening this and having a poke around and browsing so that you can sort of understand the full expanse of all of the applications that you have access to. So you can launch everything online here via that button or via the app launcher. Now, if you did want to install your application offline, you can see in the top right here we've got this install Office button, and so to kick everything off, all you do is click the install Office drop down, and then you've got this premium Office apps option here. So it will then download an installer, and you run that and it installs and sets up all of the Office applications for you. Now we can definitely assist with the installation process and setting up and configuration of everything, particularly depending on your security settings. Sometimes installing new applications might require an administrator password, which our help desk can absolutely assist with if you need support. Worth noting, when I mentioned before potentially using Office Online over here on the left hand side, these tiles, rather than the offline version, if you're on a metered connection, a mobile data hotspot, due to the install being several gigabytes, it is just worth noting that when you click this premium Office apps button here and download the installer, at least for Windows, the initial installer is not what is several gigabytes. The initial install is actually quite small for Windows. It's only a few megabytes, and then when you double click on that file in your downloads on your Windows computer in File Explorer and then run the installer, it then, as part of the installer, reaches out to the internet and contacts Microsoft's servers, and then the installer talks to the internet from there and continues to then proceed with downloading the remainder, couple of gigabytes of data. So you don't need to be concerned that if you're just clicking this button here or just grabbing the installer, that initial installer is not going to tear through all of your data and sort of use up your data cap or cost you money in extra data charges. It's only then the actual installer itself that then starts sort of kicking off and using quite a bit of data. So there is actually an option in Windows 10 in that instance that gives you a warning or prevents you from downloading large amounts of data over metered connections as well. So if I actually just click our Wi-Fi symbol down here in the taskbar and go to network and internet settings, you can see I've got my Wi-Fi connection here, and we go to properties, and then we have this metered connection here. So you can see it's saying if you want to control data usage over a limited data plan, you can set a connection as metered. So like I said, the initial installer won't go through all of that data for you. It's only once you then execute or run the installer that it starts to use that data, but you have got that metered connection limitation setting built into Windows 10 to prevent that from going haywire. But obviously anyone else that's on a regular connection at home or in the office, you can feel free to download that as normal and use that data. You may be on a metered connection and not be fussed about using several gigabytes of data anyway. Now the Mac option is actually a little bit different. It up front does download when you click this install Office and then premium Office apps button. It does download a file of the entire Office suite from the get-go. So clicking this button on a Mac will kick off a several gigabytes, 3 or 4 gigabytes. It might even be as large as 6 gigabytes now option. But on Windows, like I said, the initial download quite small, and then only begins to download more data afterwards. So very rare edge case for the majority of people that are just at home or in the office and on a regular internet connection with no data cap or a very large data cap and no extra charges for data fees. You can click install and get started right away. Office Online does look very similar and function very similar to the offline version. There's been a lot of work done by Microsoft to make it look quite similar in terms of the user interface, so there isn't a steep learning curve or anything to worry about, and majority of the features are the same as well. There's only a very few minor features, particularly ones that are quite intensive on processing power and sort of quite workload heavy, particularly sort of if you think around some of the formulas and macros inside of Excel. They don't work in the web browser just purely because a web browser sort of isn't as powerful or doesn't have the full capabilities of offline Excel, but certainly the vast majority of times, 99 times out of 100, if you did opt to use an online only option, so to use Office Online and launch the applications here in your web browser from the tiles on the left hand side or the app launcher, you would not notice a difference on a day-to-day basis. They would operate and the exact same, look the exact same, and have the same functionality. So certainly, if you're looking to sort of keep everything streamlined and cloud-based and agile and not have to install things on your computer and sort of take up space, you can absolutely opt to go with the browser version only. Now obviously everything is cloud-based, so the desktop version and the online version all sync with each other. Obviously, if you haven't got an internet connection at the time, you won't be able to use Office Online in the web browser, so that is a situation where the offline version works better and is preferred. Obviously, without an internet connection using the offline version of Office, you can edit and work on documents, but obviously it can't sync back up with your account into the cloud while you're offline without an internet connection. So it won't do it instantly, but what it will do is it sort of keeps that data there in sort of a cache, or it remembers it, and the next time it does come online, so as soon as you do eventually reconnect to an internet connection again, all of the data that you've been working on locally in the offline version will then begin syncing up again and mirroring with the cloud once you do come back onto an internet connection. So it is worth keeping in mind and sort of being aware of if you are traveling and working remotely, when and where you're going to be and whether you're going to have access to a steady internet connection and a computer that you can use, and planning accordingly how you're going to work on your data, what sort of setup and configuration you're going to use based on those factors. So I think that about covers it today. We've gone over the basics of how to log into your browser for the first time and access the Office 365 webpage, how to log into your account and then change your basic essential security settings, and then we've gone over how to use Office 365 both online and offline. So of course, if you have any other queries or questions, as always, more than welcome to reach out to myself or any other member of the IT Smart Solutions team. We have plenty of other videos on the channel that you can check out as well in regards to other Office 365 products and other products in the Microsoft ecosystem, as well as just general IT matters as well, unrelated to Microsoft Office 365. We're always willing to help or answer any additional questions or have feedback or suggestions for more content, and help with any other queries you may have, and give further training and demonstrations, particularly if it's something that's not already covered on our channel. This is going to be part of a multi-part series that we're doing on basic fundamentals training of Microsoft Office 365. So if it is your first time using the platform or migrating over from Google Suite, Google Workspaces, like I said, definitely keep an eye out and make sure to have a look at our basic fundamentals training for Outlook or Exchange Online, which is your emails and contacts and calendar management, but also our basics training for SharePoint, which is your document management system, or your cloud file storage and sharing. So for people new to Office 365, definitely check those out if you have queries about how to get up and running with the day-to-day basics of the platform. We've got plenty of resources on the channel in regards to that. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.